welcome to Hustle and Harmony podcast. I'm Julia.
And I'm Emily.
And today we are filming our episode from Australia.
Brisbane, Australia, to be exact.
It's our last day here, and we wanted to give y'all a little recap while it's fresh in our minds about how incredible this trip has been. And we're going to kind of start it off with just like the one big snafu, which was my commute at the beginning of this. Everybody knows
Y'all are not ready for this.
Australia's far away. How long was your commute?
36 hours.
Okay, so 36 hours, still crazy long, but like kind of expected you're going to the other side of the world. Mine took 72 hours, and it's because on one of my many flights, because I went New York to Nashville to San Francisco to Sydney to Hamilton Island, then took a ferry to Airlie Beach. Like, that was my commute.
Proserpine, specifically.
Proserpine was the island.
Airport.
Mine was Hamilton Island Airport.
Oh, okay.
We went to different airports.
Yeah, you're right.
And so I ended up having a 72-hour commute because I have to be politically correct about figuring out how to say this correctly, but I don't know any other way to describe it. An extremely overweight person was boarding the flight from Nashville to San Francisco, early boarding because they needed assistance. They were getting wheeled on this like machine wheelchair that's like bigger than a normal wheelchair. And there was like a debate on if he could get on the flight or not. And then they decided to like try and get him on the flight. They get him all the way down there. There are like multiple people trying to move him from the wheelchair into his row of seats. And somehow, I'm told all this secondhand by somebody else who was like in the aisle watching this. And he said that basically they were trying to move him into the aisle and he fell and got stuck in the main like aisle walking space between all of the rows of seats, and nobody could get him up for hours. The ambulance came, the fire truck came, the police truck came, all around the plane, down on the tarmac, and all the way from like where we walk on and board the flight.
Sad.
It was so sad. All the paramedics came with multiple like carts. Nobody could get him up. It took hours. And then they ended up canceling that flight because by the time, literally like 3 hours later, when they finally were able to get him off, the runway had closed for the specific weight of our flight, which I didn't know was a thing. I didn't know that certain runways were for certain weight.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
So anyway, it took me 72 hours, but we made it. And everything in Australia has been incredible, so it was worth it.
Well, she missed her connection from Nashville. She missed her connection. She was supposed to be in San Fran and fly from San Fran to Sydney, so she missed her flight from San Francisco. So she ended up on the one the next day, and she was in San Francisco since, like, the morning and didn't fly out until 11 p.m.
From 9 a.m. to 11 p.m.
And so
crazy.
I was, like, annoyed that I had a 5-hour layover in San Fran, and I show up, and she's like, no.
I'm like, let me give you a tour of the airport.
Yeah,
I know
literally.
where everything is. Let's eat here.
This is my bed.
Yeah, exactly.
So the silver lining is we ended up on the same flight over here, which was very fun. But yeah, that was a really
cute.
Crazy travel day for you. Travel days, plural.
And then we made it to the sailboat. And if I have to pick somewhere for there to be like a travel snafu, I would rather it not be on a sailboat.
Yeah.
So we'll go with
Yeah.
that.
I do want you to explain though why you were in New York, because that's really cool.
Oh,
and not from Nashville.
The reason my flight left out of New York instead of out of Nashville was because I last minute got booked opening for a Jordan Davis show in Long Island, and it was so much fun. It was honestly one of the coolest shows I've played in a very long time. It was like between 7,000 and 8,000 people.
And our oldest sister Kristen got to go because it was in Long Island.
She got to have her first like mom's day out where her husband, our brother-in-law Martin, like watched little baby Jacob, and Kristen came with me, and we just had a girls' day, and it was so fun. She was side stage with me. I tried to get her to come on stage and sing, but she said no. But the show was really awesome, and it made it worth it to have to add another leg onto the flight. But I'm excited that we were able to make it work, because pretty crazy that it was like the day before a commute to Australia.
Yeah. So once we both got to Sydney, we like connected through a couple of other locations to get to Airlie Beach, which is where we took off for our 4-day sailboat, 3 nights.
Let's describe this sailboat.
It was such an incredible experience. Oh my gosh. So it was, how many people total were there? Because our group was 7.
Yeah.
And then there was probably 15 other passengers, and then like 7 or 8 crew.
I want to say 30 people total.
That would make sense, yeah. So it was like, I don't know, a medium-sized sailboat and 30 people. So it was a lot.
But these rooms, y'all,
Yeah.
like, I have never experienced a sleeping situation like the sailboat rooms.
It was almost like illogical how the rooms were designed.
It was
But
crazy.
every room had its own bathroom, which was so surprising.
But, like, I don't know how your shower was, but every bathroom was, like, a little bit different, too, because it's, like, everything is built into these weird nooks and crannies.
Yeah.
Nothing is, like, a normally shaped room. And so, in our bathroom, the shower head sprays, like, literally onto the toilet.
Yeah, that's how mine was, too.
Okay, and if you have to go in and use the bathroom, but anybody showered, just, like, the whole floor is just wet.
Your feet are soaking wet. So whenever I'd pee,
It's
I'd,
crazy.
like, leave my feet in my room and then I would, like, sit in the bathroom because the bathroom was just, like, a small little wooden door.
Yeah.
So you could open it up and, like, I had my feet in my room, but I would, like, sort of lean across because if you put your feet in the bathroom, it's soaking wet because it's also the shower. It's only, like, I don't know, 3 feet wide.
And the water's moving side to side, so it doesn't drain normally because,
So
like,
gross.
the boat is moving and whatever. But it was, like, that was the first impression. So we walk into these rooms and we're like, oh my gosh. And you're, like, bougie princess in your own room, have a big bed all to yourself.
Let's not describe it like that.
Because a friend canceled. You were supposed to have
Yeah.
to share, and you literally couldn't
Yeah.
find someone to fill the room. So you're
Yeah.
like, all right, whatever. I got this big bougie bed. And
Okay, she's way overhyping it right
I'm
now.
super overhyping
It was a double bed, and the, like, 2 feet where your feet go, you had, like, 6 inches before there was, like, a ceiling. So my feet were under the ceiling, and I, like, slammed my shins on the ceiling, like, throughout the night. But I actually ended up just sleeping, like, I could only fit, so that I wouldn't do that, I could only fit, like, diagonally across the bed, and my head was, like, directly under the AC unit on the wall. So if it was on, it was blasting on my face. And so throughout the night, I would just, like, turn it on and off.
So
'Cause you
picture
woke
that.
up a bunch throughout the night.
But 2 people in that exact same situation. And that was my situation. We had 3 people in my room sharing that one little bathroom. And we had a bunk bed style. One was smaller than, it was half of a twin size was what the top bunk was. But that was the luxury bed because at least you were by yourself. The bottom bunk shared, and it was smaller than a double. It was literally a twin size bed shared. And honestly, we were always so tired after being in the sun all day that for the most part it was okay. There was only one night where they, like, turned the generator off and it was super hot in the room, and I also was, like, sick. I think I had a fever, so I was like, I'm gonna go sleep up on the deck. And it was actually kind of cool because I woke up at, like, 4 a.m. and just was looking up at the stars, and it was wild.
Well, on the first night, Emmy slept on the deck so that you and Angie had your own beds.
Well, she didn't really, though. She, like, went up and then she went to the like, inside couch by the breakfast table, but she was still in that room, too. Like, it was, like
in the living room?
No, in our room, too. It was, like, which is the same thing I did. We, like, I spent, like, 4 hours on the deck and the other 4 hours in the room still.
Yeah.
It was just it was an entire situation. But aside from that one little weird piece of it, which I've got to say, I'm so proud of our parents and my dad's best friend, Kim. Like, they were such troopers about us bringing them on this, like...
They didn't complain once.
Not
Also, we found out
time.
after we left the sailboat that my parents' toilet was literally on the ground. Like
a squatter
we were
toilet.
Like, our
if you're
toilet was, like, in our shower, but their toilet was on the floor. My dad is, like, 6'5". Like, I don't even want to know how he made that work. But we didn't know until afterwards. They're living
That's
saints.
so funny.
Anyways, okay, so tell them about your scuba dive, because you scuba dive, like, the first morning.
Yeah, and I want
She's certified.
I want to also say, like, we're shocked by what the rooms were on this sailboat, but we've never been on a sailboat before. It was actually an insanely incredible sailboat. Like, Summer Joe, it had just had $1 million facelift. It was beautiful. The staff and the crew were so awesome.
Yeah.
And they made everything as accommodating as you could possibly have it be, like, living on a sailboat for multiple days in a row.
I was expecting to, like, not sleep for the 3 nights and for it to be, like, super rocky. And it was actually, like, super chill. There was only, like, 1 hour where I feel like we were rocky in the whole 4 days. It was amazing.
So we're on the Great Barrier Reef. And this boat is mainly, which I guess we all kind of learned, after the fact, but it's mainly a scuba diving sailboat trip. And we didn't understand that, I guess, like coming on the trip. I had seen that there were scuba diving options. I knew we were going to the Great Barrier Reef, so I was like, okay, I'm going to get certified. I want to scuba dive. Bucket list, I'm a bucket list girl, like I've said before. If there's anywhere to do my first scuba dive, it's the Great Barrier Reef. Like, this is one of the 7 wonders of the world. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. We get on the boat. They have scuba diving sessions every, like, 3 or 4 hours, basically. Like, you can do a morning dive. You can do a lunchtime dive. You can do an evening dive. You can do a night dive, like, every day. And it was
And a lot of people will do the sailboat and, like, do all of the dives.
All the dives. And it's like you log them, like a pilot would log his flights. And I just learned so much about the scuba diving, like, world and how people kind of do it. And it was beautiful. It was so cool. I think for the first day that I went scuba diving, I guess the tide was high, so they had a lot of the visibility. They kept calling it the Viz. In Australia, they shortened everything, like all over the words. It's like Brizzy is Brisbane, like so. The Viz wasn't great, but you just had to get a little closer to the reef to see it. It was like you couldn't be 20 feet away and see all the coral. So I got a little bit closer, and the absolutely beautiful colors of the coral. I saw these huge crabs and these crazy looking fish that I had never seen before in my life. And obviously this coral reef is living, like, and people don't sometimes remember that, but it only grows like a centimeter a year. And to see how big some of the pieces of this reef were, it was just so impressive.
Well, it's
beautiful.
dying too, which is really sad.
Well, everything in the world is growing and dying at the same time. I think people make it sound a little bit worse than it is, because it was incredible. And I think the point of the Great Barrier Reef is how insane its size is. And so when you're just that big of a massive living plant, essentially, you can't keep all of it 100% all the time. It's just so huge.
Well, I just mean people are saying it's going to be completely gone, like, pretty soon in the future, which is why it's cool that we got to experience it.
We literally just took a second to, like, Google it and look it up, and the headline said, "The Great Barrier Reef is not dead, nor is it in great health. It takes a lot more than a headline to explain what's going on with it." So I think you can do more research on it if you want to. But the Great Barrier Reef was incredible, and it was fun to learn how to, like, use all of my equipment, and I learned that some of the scuba diving gear was not exactly the same as what I trained on. So that's one thing to note, is you're still going to have to do a little bit of adjusting if you're going to not buy all your own gear, which I don't plan on scuba diving every week, and that stuff's very expensive, so I'm not going to buy my own gear. I'm just going to rent it wherever I go if I want to, scuba dive somewhere. But it was incredible, so I definitely recommend it, but I'm going to just give a big moment to talk about the night dive. It was incredible, and I had no expectations for it because I didn't know that night scuba diving was even a thing. But apparently on this sailboat, it was one of the big things they offer, because I think it is pretty rare. Like, not every single company does night dives. And you have to be certified for it. So only a couple of us on the boat were even allowed to do the night dives. When we went down there, we brought black lights, and the entire coral reef
so cool
glowed neon in the black lights, and it felt like you were swimming in outer space. And at one point, we turned off all the lights, and it was the most pitch black darkness I have ever experienced before.
That's terrifying.
It was actually terrifying, but it was cool that it happened for a minute just to, like, experience it. But we all had lights, so it was like a choice, Yeah. But we didn't talk about it. It happened kind of on accident, because we were switching from flashlights to the black light and switching back from the black light to flashlights. And so then it was just like, because you can't see anything. Like, there weren't any of those light up fish that you see in Finding Nemo none of that. It was pitch black. But once we got our lights on, it was like you were literally swimming through outer space.
That's so cool. Yeah, so I scuba dove for the first time, like, actually the first time I'd ever scuba dove on that, because it was like an introductory one. I hadn't done any lessons before. And Kurt is one of the people that was working on the sailboat. He was amazing, and he took me and Julia's friend Angie on our, like, first dive ever, and he just, like, held our hands the whole time we were down there. And we obviously they did a bunch of instructions and, like, safety tests beforehand, where they taught us, like, we had to pass all these different skills, like taking the, what is it called, the mouthpiece, like, out of your mouth, and then putting it back in, like underwater. You have to like press this button and it clears the water, and then you start breathing. And then like dropping it, you have to like put your arm around your back and then like grab it again so you know how to get it if you lose the mouthpiece. And then what were the other tests that we had to do?
Oh, there's one where you have to be able to clear the
Yeah.
water out of your goggles.
Your goggles.
And it's basically like you have to blow bubbles really hard
Out of your nose.
Out of your nose and open the bottom part of your goggles so that the top doesn't let more water in.
Yeah, which is so confusing to me. I was like, how, if you're opening your goggles, does it not just let more water in? But whatever, it works.
It works.
So just trust us on that. Anyways, so
there's a bunch of little tests that they had to do. But
Yeah.
one of the things with the certified divers and the non-certified divers, because Mom and Dad and you, Angie, a bunch of people tried it for the first time, which I thought was so cool that you were still able to like put
do
the
it,
gear
even
on
though we
and
weren't
scuba dive at
certified.
the Great Barrier Reef. Like that's amazing.
It was really heavy. The tank was so heavy. It was cool. Like
So getting
felt
in and
so
out of the
official.
boat,
Getting in
wasn't
and out
it
of the boat was
hardest part?
hard. Yeah.
And I think we're relatively strong.
Yeah.
But like watching Beck do it, so we have obviously they're so strong. So Beck and Bailey and Kurt were our main scuba instructors for the most part. At least they were on my dives.
Okay.
And it was so wild watching how easily they did everything, and they were just like picking this big thing. I'm like, they must just have like certain muscles that are crazy from carrying this gear around and like knowing how to use it. We had fins on, like little paddles.
I wasn't a big fan of the fins. It kind of hurt my ankles.
It
But
hurt my feet too. But it was still cool to swim like a mermaid for a little while.
Yeah, it was.
We wore wetsuits because the water was pretty cold still. But it was sunny, and I think like the weather was actually perfect because if it had been any hotter, it would have been hard to be up on the top deck.
Yeah.
But it was the perfect temperature, and I think we should describe the inside, like just the view of the boat, and then everyone who's on it. So I'll talk about kind of like the inside of the boat was there were two main dining areas, and then this little kitchen that was so cute. And I couldn't believe they cooked for 30 people in this tiny kitchen so efficiently. It was awesome.
And Bailey was my gluten-free queen. She made everything, like, made sure that I was good. Like, everything was certified gluten-free because I have celiac disease, so...
And everyone else had to wait in line and, like, battle to try and make sure there was enough food left by the time you were there. But
mine was just
princess
on the side.
had her own big bowl of gluten-free whatever.
It was the only time I've ever been grateful to be an allergy person.
You know what? You deserved that.
Thank you.
You won. And my mom and I were actually talking about it. It was so funny. We were like, how lucky are we that Emily gets served separately? Because you would have been so upset if you're like...
If I just didn't have food, I would have been hangry the whole time.
Yeah, no. So
they were awesome about that. It was really helpful. But yeah, so...
The top part of the boat was like a cool... It's hard to explain because they had these two tables that were like off to the side that they could they could take off completely, or you could use them to eat meals. And they would take those tabletops off and move them so that you could have full rows of benches just for scuba gear.
I didn't even notice they did that.
Yeah.
I'm such an idiot. Like, now thinking back, I'm like, oh yeah, there were tables, and then the tables were gone. I didn't even realize they were changing it.
That's how much of a scuba diving boat this sailboat was. Like, the tables were movable so that the entire row could be used for people to gear up.
Yeah.
Which was so awesome. And then the front part, I mean, we don't know any good boat terminology, so sorry about this, but like the front part of the boat, we had all these bean bags, and everybody would just lay out on bean bags.
On the hood. It was really fun.
It was so cute.
And there were two hammocks, and one of the hammocks, like, on the side, I basically, like, claimed as mine, and just, like, lived in it, and it was the best thing ever. I just curled up in my little hammock. It looked like I was in a cocoon, and I'd, like, pop my head out and talk to everyone in their bean bags, and then just, like, go back in and pretend to nap.
Best photos of the trip. Her in this.
It was a good
in this
time.
hammock. It was so cute.
It was a great time. So that was kind of like the beginning of it, and then so the first day we got there at like 4 p.m. So it was a shorter day. Went to bed, and then the second day after we had all gone scuba diving, we took one of the little like runner boats out to this island. And so we took this little runner boat out to this little beach, and it was actually Whitsunday Islands National Park, technically.
The entire islands are.
Mm-hmm. So they had like this cute sign of that on the beach, but we got to watch the most beautiful sunset of like our entire lives. It was
blankets.
Unreal. And I have like some videos where we're just like playing music. So the group that we were there with, there were a couple of couples, only one solo traveler, a group of Dutch exchange students and German who I like became best friends with. They were so fun. and then our whole group. So it was like our family minus Kristen, because she's got a little baby, our parents, and then 2 of Julia's best friends, Emmy and Angie.
And we haven't given Emmy any shout out yet on this, and she's literally the only reason we were on this sailboat. Like, the entire thing was her idea.
And this podcast #1 fan. We've
yeah,
said before, and
she's
we'll
for
say
sure
forever.
gonna be listening to this, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna give Emmy her like full shout out right here.
The 4th Cole sister.
So she is who I've done all my trips around the world with, basically, and it was so fun to get her perspective on, okay, what's the cool thing that you do in Australia that probably isn't typical, and this was it. It's taking a sailboat through the Whitsunday Islands, because we met a ton of local Australians in the rest of our trip, and most of them had never been. So we saw one of the most beautiful beaches in the world called the Whitehaven Beach, and Emmy, it's so fun to travel with her, because she knows what the cool things are supposed to be, and she was like, okay, we need to go be ready for this, and she was like, I just hope that it's as cool in person as it is in all of the photos, and I hope that there's some way to really view it, because you kind of have to be looking from a high lookout point down on Whitehaven Beach to see why it's so cool. There were 3 lookout points.
Amazing. So our captain his name's Ryan, but everyone called him Turtle. And right before we took off we took these little runner boats to like all the different activities that we did. So we had to take a runner boat to what they called it, the shitty beach. And then you have to do like a hike to get to Whitehaven Beach. Mm-hmm. And
probably
it was so cool because he spent, 10 minutes describing basically like the magic of this beach and the sand of this beach. Like, people clean their jewelry in it. Some lady just lost like a $36,000 wedding ring in the sand because she was trying to clean it.
And the sand is so fine that if you drop something in it, it will sink. Like, you can't get it back, which is crazy.
Yeah. And whenever we got there, the hike took us to 3 different lookout points over the beach. So you could see all the different shades of blue. And there are stingrays and little sharks. That's actually the reason why you have to take the runner boat.
Banana sharks.
Do you know if it's banana sharks on the other one too? Because remember they were saying from the runner boat, from the boat to
I think they were different.
The first beach, they were like, you don't want to get in this water. Like, you don't want to know what's in this water. So you're like,
that water was where the massive turtle breeding grounds were, and I saw all these huge sea turtles that were over 100 years old coming up to breathe. They were massive.
Wait, I didn't see that. That's so cool.
We took 2 separate boats. There were a bunch of us, obviously. So there were 2 runner boats. And the first boat took off, and when y'all left, our driver turtle, or our captain turtle, started pointing out all of the turtles that were popping up, and they were huge. He was like, yeah, that one's probably 90 years old. Like, that one's probably 100-something years old.
By the way, shout out Turtle. He was, like, #1 in Australia in the world for sailing at one point. He's an absolute G, so...
He was such a vibe.
Yeah, he was awesome.
We got a family photo with him at the end of the
trip.
We did.
Like, we're adopted him.
He's going to come to America at some point.
So we did Whitehaven Beach, and then that night we also, while some people did scuba diving, we did a hike up to this lookout point over this beautiful cove, and I mean, it looked just like a painting.
It felt like kind of like if you've ever been to, either like New Zealand or Scotland, I don't know, but it was very cliffside, green, absolutely beautiful with these kind of desert-like plants that I had never seen before.
Like giant weeds or like wheat plants or something.
But like standalone.
And like 12 feet tall, like really tall.
Really crazy.
But when you looked out over the lookout point, it was like the waves crashing against the mountain. It was gorgeous. And there was also a guy on the boat named Quentin who brought his drone, and he got so much amazing footage. It was actually really scary because he threw his drone up into this like crazy wind on top of the mountain that we were doing this lookout point, and it was fine. The drone could handle it, so I was very impressed.
I totally told him not to beforehand as well. I was like, I really feel like
we could barely stand.
You're gonna lose that drone. It was wild how powerful that machine is.
It was really impressive.
And he sent us some videos of the drone footage. Obviously, we will be posting these things on socials like soon, so stay tuned for just some of the coolest views from the sailboat.
Yeah. So what was really cool is I feel like everyone on the sailboat really vibed together, and we all got along as like a big group, which was really cool. It was cool to see people like come out of their shells towards the end of the sailboat too.
We were playing cards together. Like,
every night we'd play Presidents and Assholes.
Super intense card game that
Shout out Emmy for the cards.
So fun.
But on the last night, it was actually like the birthday week of one of the people on staff who was like working on the boat, Victor. who was so awesome, so kind, and so we kind of like threw him a birthday party, and it was so fun. Beck came up with these. Oh, Beck and Bailey came up with these games for us to play.
I forgot.
One was like they called it like the box game. They had like the rope game. They had everything was just like one word games.
Just different things.
And you're like, what does that mean? And they're like, no explanation. Yeah, literally, it's just like just pick one. So anyways, we did the box game first. It was basically like a cardboard box. You just have to bend down and pick it up with just your mouth. And then you can rip a piece off, and so it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and people like make a fool of themselves trying to pick this up.
Like imagine just being, if you're good at yoga, you'll win this game. It's like who can bend their body in the craziest way and balance enough to not fall over when you're going face first down at the ground. Yeah,
it was really funny. So we did that, and it was just
on a moving sailboat.
Yeah.
Also, like, crazy.
It was really fun, and we were all really sad to leave at the end, but it was the most magical trip ever.
We were sad to leave at the end, but at the same time, I really do think it was the perfect amount of time.
Me too.
It was 3 nights, 4 days. So the first day we got on kind of in the afternoon, and the day we arrived back at Airlie Beach, we got off the boat at probably 2 p.m. about.
Yeah.
And so we had time that day to like eat a dinner, and it was a nice span of time. We didn't have any bad weather. We got super lucky about that. Mm-hmm. Nobody on the boat was seasick, which was crazy. Angie and I both took some preventative like nausea medicine, but I honestly wonder if I even needed to.
Yeah.
Because it was
very
pretty
rocky.
Smooth.
Yeah.
There was only one night that we were all super rocking, and it was because I think a little bit of weather came in that night, but we were all inside at that point anyway.
We stayed pretty close to like land at all times. We were just sailing around the Whitsunday Islands, which I didn't even know what we were doing whenever I got on it. So that was really cool. And I hadn't even really heard of them honestly before that trip. So it was just such a magical experience to get to be there in person and realize there's just this whole other universe that exists. And everyone who works on the boat is just like living their best life. Like they just get to live in this paradise and hang out with people who are on vacation and go scuba diving. Like it was so cool.
Having a glimpse into this other world was so fun, and it feels almost like we were in a book, like in some novel. You know how a book or a movie just takes you out of what you're doing and you just get to experience the other world for a little while? Yeah. That is exactly what happened. Absolutely. It was really cool to hear from their perspective why they're doing what they're doing. And I also learned Australia has a very cool visa program. It's like a work visa program that people can come for over 2 years. Yeah. And they make it pretty easy to do. Yeah. You can't get a citizenship very easily here, but you can come here and do a work visa for a relatively easy visa.
Yeah, that reminds me. On the flight over, I made another best friend with this girl named Sydney who was sitting next to me. And so it's like a 15-hour flight to get here. So 8 hours into this 15-hour flight, I'm like, this girl looks cool, and we literally haven't spoken for 8 hours. Like, I'm gonna say hi. I was like, what's up? Because at that point, like, I know people get annoyed when people talk to you on a plane. Right. But at that point, it's like, we've got 7 more hours, and we're just bored. So I said hi, and she ended up being the coolest human ever. She was from San Francisco. Her name was Sydney, and she was moving to Sydney. She just got a one-way ticket and had just graduated from Oregon and was just like, yeah, I'm going to go work in Sydney for a little bit and travel. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever.
Can someone make an Emily in Paris show, but about Sydney and Sydney? Yeah. Because I would love that.
That's actually genius. Yeah.
Okay, so, best advice for someone going on a sailboat?
That is a great question. And I think, first of all, I'll go to our classic, which is eye mask and earplugs.
Oh, my God.
Never disappoints. And literally everyone who didn't have those was jealous that we had brought ours on there. Other things, I would say just, like, bring a lot of different, like, changes of clothes and towels because everything basically gets wet and it's hard for things to dry.
But you can't bring that much because it has to fit in a tiny little shoebox. So maybe it's, like, bring really fast drying items.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to, it's like, I mean, try to not go on a cold sailboat so you can bring warmer weather clothes which are smaller, but just like, I brought 2 of my own towels on there too, and then ended up like using one of them as a blanket at night too. So, and a giant hoodie because it got cold at night
The
And,
wind, like you never
yeah.
know what the wind is going to be like.
Yeah. I had a giant
Sunscreen.
hoodie and sweatpants, and I was very, very grateful to have those.
And bring sunscreen.
Yeah.
Like, apparently, I mean, Emmy was saying there's like a hole in the ozone there, and we're like closer to the equator. And anyway, she was like, it's very dangerous. And she and I got the worst sunburns of our life snorkeling in Zanzibar in Africa.
Yeah.
So the two of us were like hyper diligent
You've been changed ever since.
Yeah, I mean, I really do think it was the most scary. I had sun poisoning, and I was sick, like truly sick from it, and obviously all my skin peeled off on my back. Like I've never had a worse sunburn, and it was so funny because Emmy was like, "This is par for the course," because she's like just paler than I am. She's like, "This happens to me every time I'm in the sun." I was like, "No, this is never happening to me again." Yeah. So we wore so much sunscreen, and
everyone was really good about putting sunscreen on the whole time. I feel like
we had a really great time and a really great group.
Shout out Summer Joe for the best first sailboat experience we could have ever asked for.
Absolutely.
So on the next episode, we'll talk about after the sailboat, we then went to Sydney for a few days, and it was raining, so we kind of had to improv some more activities with that, but it was still so amazing. And then we flew to Brisbane, which is where we are now, and we've been for a few days.
Mm-hmm. The rest of our inland, on-land experience for Australia, we're going to do another episode, just because we want to make sure that we don't rush through any of the cool details and give y'all some restaurant recommendations and some tourism recommendations in these cities. So we will, I guess, maybe hold off on our books until after that episode too.
Yeah, that's cool. Perfect. But what I wanted to say is in Brisbane, we went to the Lone Pine Koala Sanctuary too and finally got to see the koalas and kangaroos. So we'll talk about that on the next episode. And as we're recording this, we're going to be going to the Gold Coast like later today. So we've got a lot of the fun like inland experiences that are going to be in the next episode too. Thank y'all so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank y'all so much for listening to this episode of Hustle and Harmony.
Please leave us a 5-star review or comment, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on socials at Julia Cole Music and at Emily Cole.
We'll love you forever either way, and we can't wait to see y'all next week.
See y'all then.